So first, we will talk about what are the challenges with outages today. Next, we would jump into doing a past outage assessment to see how we should assess our past outages. Next, we would introduce the auto remediation portion, which is new in R12. Next, we will do a global past outage observability. And lastly, we would summarize the problems we addressed through all of these and then take the Q&A. So looking at your past ticket count, we do something known as a ticket assessment in NetBrain where we work with your NOC team and we get to know how many tickets you receive for a certain category. Because according to research, more than 90% of the tickets that you are receiving are repetitive. And it's usually only the unique tickets that needs a lot of troubleshooting and to be solved. So 90% of your time as engineers are spent working on the same repetitive troubleshooting process. Now, this gives birth to automation. What if there was a way to automate your past outages? So anytime a ticket comes in, we do a quick comparison to see if the ticket has come in the past. If so, we know how to solve it and already have the automation set up to solve it. That is basically the whole idea behind shifting automation to the left. So our workflow here is very simple. In the first demo that I'm going to show you, we will take a past incident and we will build a root cause identification intent, which means we would find out why this problem is happening. Next, we will do a network-wide replication of that intent because if the problem is happening on one device, chances are it could be happening on other places in the network. And then lastly, we would add those to our past outages database as our vision is to have a global past outages dashboard where you have every single problem that's been happening in the past being monitored so that next time a problem comes in, we would know exactly what the problem is and the steps to solve that problem. So let's take a quick look into our demo. Now, I already opened our past incident. So here it says interface error disabled that was found on two interfaces, and we see the error reason was BPDU guard violation. So this is a very simple example and the reason I'm using this simple example right here is that I can explain the functionality so that you understand the logic behind the example, not just the example itself. So very simple issue, interface error disabled, and we also know the reason. So let's go about solving this. Now, what would you typically do when you see a problem like that? Well, the first thing you want to do is run show interface error disabled command, right? So what we do is I'm gonna create a real-time intent right in front of you in just a few minutes. So what command we do use? We'll use the show interface status disabled. I'm gonna go ahead, retrieve that command, and right here we find two interfaces with error disabled. So building the intent is basically just takes two parts. One, you create the parser. Two, you create the logic. Creating the parser is very easy with NetBrain. If I go ahead to choose to create my parser, what I want to do is I just highlight what I need. I go ahead and I pass that. So NetBrain is smart enough to identify that these are the ports and these are the status. So I'm just gonna go ahead, save that. So now that we have created like the parser, what I want to do is create the logic that I want to use with that past information. So I'm going to go ahead and add the diagnosis for that part. So with our no code process, it's very easy to just define the logic you need. So I'm first of all going to go set my table key. And then what I want to do is I want to tell NetBrain that if the port is not empty, then it means there's an alert, right? As this command would only show up when it only shows up when there's an error. So it means if here is empty, then obviously there's no error. So if it's not empty, there's an error. I can go ahead, just edit this message to be more clear. So I want NetBrain to say that this port is error disabled. And I can go ahead to show this message here as well. And then else, I want NetBrain to tell me that everything is good. So just like that, we've simply created our logic. So now I can go ahead and run this automation, this intent. So far what we did, guys, is we did a post-mortem analysis, which is extremely important. You know, there's a problem, the ticket was closed, and then nobody cares about the problem anymore. But you want to go back and see why that problem happened and then analyze the rest of your network with when that problem is replicated. So here you can see that there's two interfaces that have that error disabled port. Let's switch back to the PowerPoint. So what we just did is the root cause identification. Next, we want to do a network-wide intent replication to find out if this problem has been happening across my network. So let's do that real quick. So I'm just going to go ahead, save the map and the automation. And then we can go under the map intent and run it. And right here, I can now go ahead and replicate this intent. So I can do that using the intent replication wizard. So all it needs from you is three simple things. First of all, is asking for the seed intent. So what's the seed intent? So this means that what's the automation that you are trying to replicate? NetBrain automatically takes it, right, and puts it in so you don't have to worry about this. Next, it's going to ask us, do we want to create a database table or use an existing database table? In this case, I'm going to create a new one. So this is just going to be a database of all the devices and all the replicated intents in there. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as interface error disabled. I choose where I want to save this. And now it's asking me for the device group. So it's asking basically in the table, what are the devices do I want to be a part of that table? So I'm going to go ahead and use one of my existing device group I've already created. In this case, I want all my Cisco iOS switches. Once that's done, we go next. And here it's just asking me if there's more additional information it wants, such as like to what do I want to replicate the intent to, which devices do I want to replicate this intent to. So this intent qualify for the device group I already have in my table, right? I can run it for all the devices in that table. So I'm still gonna highlight it the same Cisco iOS switches. And if we go next, yeah, I'm just gonna quickly add an additional column to my table, the device status code. So it just shows me that green and red, right? So I can easily see where there's an alert or not. So now I can just go ahead, save and replicate this table. And it takes a while to build the table. When it's done, you can easily open it from here. I already have an example of it opened up here as well. So this is just basically what it's gonna look like. I have all my Cisco iOS switches. I have the intent being replicated to all of them. And here I have the status for the intent for the result that was run. And as you can see, we see two alerts on two of our devices. So what I was able to do is I caught the problem, I replicated it across my network, and now I know that there are two problems. And we didn't even have a ticket for this one here yet, which is good news, right? Because I was able to proactively go find the problem elsewhere in my network. And this is the power of post-mortem analysis. Now, let's go back to the PowerPoint. So, what have we done so far? We took a problem, we built an intent to identify the root cause, we replicated that intent, and now we added that to a database. But here comes the fun part. Is there a way to one-click remediate that problem? The answer is yes, by using auto remediation. So as you can see here, the root cause identification intent has been merged with an additional logic known as auto remediation, so that we can build a new intent which can not just diagnose but can also remediate. So let's go back and play with our intent a bit more. So we know this intent right now, it just does error detection for us, no remediation. So I'm gonna go edit the intent. So go to view intent, edit, and I can go edit the diagnosis there. Let me just enlarge this so it's easier to see. Now, question for you guys is, what would you think is the right command to use here if you see an error disabled port? And the answer is you just flip the interface, right? Pretty much just like this. So you will do a config T, you do interface, put the interface name, you shut down the interface, you do a no shutdown to bring it back up, right? And that's how you just solve that problem. But now, how do we do this here in NetBrain to add this to this diagnosis that we did previously? So in order to do this in NetBrain, first what we're going to do is we're going to add two variables. I'm going to call the first variable the config template. And this is the template that I want to put in. Next, I'm going to add another variable, and I'm going to call this the flag. I want this one to be an integer type. So once I've created that, right, so basically we're inside a loop, right? We're telling NetBrain that if the port is not empty, throw out this alert, else say that everything is good. So what I want to do is if there's an alert, I do want to add an additional action here. And what I'm gonna add is I'm gonna go to add action, say operate on variable, and I'm gonna say set variable. I basically just want to set the values of those variables that we defined. So first I want to set the config template to basically this, right? And in order to add this here, we have to write out in a one line sentence. So I already have written what is going to look like in NetBrain, and this is just what it's going to look like in NetBrain, right? I'm basically just saying config t, I go to the next line, interface, I leave the space, I add the interface name. In this case, I called a function to convert the interface name from like the short form to the long form, because we need to write it in the full name. Then I do a shutdown, a no shutdown, and then I exit. And I'm going to show you how you can actually add that function. So let me just copy this so I don't have to retype everything. So we want to paste that here. Let me just expand this view and paste that right there. So basically the way to insert this function in NetBrain, you just go here to function, or if you know it off by heart, you can start typing it. But if not, you can just go to function. You'll see all the functions available in NetBrain, right? The function I want to call is that interface short to full, so I can convert the short name of the interface to the full. So there it is right here. So we see it obtains an interface full name by using a given interface short name. So it's asking for just input the host name and then input the short name, and it will convert it for you. So I call the interface, I go ahead, I input the host name, and then the short name, which is the port that I want to convert. Once we add that, that is all. So some of you are over here thinking, wow, this is a lot, right? But think about it. You're the one that's, if you are the one that's building this, right? Imagine the number of times that this is going to be used. So definitely what you're looking at is here is the power user side of things, right? Where you're building the automation. But if you're an end user like me, that you don't have, then like you don't have to worry about this, right? Because for you, it is just going to be a one click button, which I'm going to show you what that looks like. So once I've set this my variable, I also want to set the value of the flag to 1 whenever it detects an error. So once it detects the error, right, I can now come and add another if statement that's basically outside this loop, where I would now execute that template that I added to execute the change. So I'm going to say if the flag is 1, then I want NetBrain to go ahead and execute the change. So I'm going to go to advanced. I'm going to go to advanced, right? You see, there are so many things you can do, but what I want to do in this case is call the function that's going to execute the change. So you're going to go ahead, as I showed you how you can easily add your functions. You can also just, if you know the names, just type it. So I just want to call the execute change function, right? And actually, this is what it's asking for. It's asking for the template, your change template, and then the device name and the change commands. So the change command is what we defined already in our config template variable. So I'm gonna go ahead and edit and add those. So I've already written out that right here, right? The path to the template, then the host name, and then the, so I'm just gonna copy this and paste that. So this is basically just the host name, and this is gonna be the config template. Great. So just to recap, just in case you lost me, first thing we did, we defined two variables, the config template and a flag. Second thing we did, we say that if our port, right, is not empty, meaning there's an error, I'm gonna set the config template to this, what we decided, and I'm gonna set the flag to 1. And then since we do have to push a change, I'm gonna call the function, the execute change function, that's gonna execute the change for me. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna save this, and we can go ahead and run it. So as you can see, it would automatically give you that auto remediation piece whenever this intent is now run. Now, what's the next step? Let's go back to the slides. So what we just did is that we took auto remediation portion and added it to our intent to create that our star intent right here. And now with one click, we can easily execute a change. Now, next question. If the problem comes back, can I get an early warning? The answer is yes, you can. So we will want to add two extra steps. So what we do is we take the updated intent, we replicate it across our entire network like we did previously. And then when we add this to our dashboard, right, now with just one click, we can execute the change. So let's go back to our intent. So, as you know, whenever we run this, it gives us that auto remediation piece. The cool part is that this is working for one device. When we replicate that across our entire network, it's now going to work for every single device. And I'm going to take one step further and create the global database that I spoke to you about in the beginning. I'm going to create a past outage observability database for you. Let me show you how that database would look like. So this is what the database would look like, right? So that was just one problem that we solved. Imagine the hundreds of different types of problems that you are getting. So what I would do is I would create this past outage database for every single problem that you've been having across every single device in your network. So every single time I get a problem, even if it's a unique problem, I'm going to do a post-mortem analysis, scale this across the network, and I'll add it over here. So now we are covering the full spectrum to a point where every single problem that is coming in would have some kind of solution with it. So this way, your troubleshooting becomes simple. You are reducing your MTTR and just making life easier. And with one click from here, you can now go ahead and create the dashboards and add all of this to that dashboard. And then this is now what it's now going to look like. So this dashboard basically has 367 intents that are running across 72 devices. This is a global view right here. You are able to see where these problems are happening. This is one of our incredible new technology in R12 where you are able to go spot all this. And as you scroll down, you will see that I have broken down the past outages into different segments like connectivity, security, failover, routing, performance, application, switching, system. And so whenever any of so these intents are running like continuously, right? And whenever any of this problem is come like it comes across any of this problem, it always give us an alert, right? From here you can easily now open up your intent, you run the intent, it tells you, do you want to remediate this, right? To execute the change. From here you can always go ahead, click yes, and it's gonna open up the change template for me. And in there, it will automatically add the device for you. I click on the device, you see the template, it already added the change template for me, right? So once I've asked for approval request to push the change, you can always go ahead and now execute the change. So that's just how simple it is to remediate any problem that you come across, since you already know how to solve the problem. So here you can also define pre-change checks, post-change checks, basically just pre-plan the whole process you want to use to push before you push the change. So before we wrap this up, right, just a quick summary of going back to the slides of what we've done so far. So can I access a past outage and look for similar problems in my network? Yes, we did that by building an intent and replicating it. Second, is there a way to one-click remediate? Yes, using auto remediation. Third, if the problem comes back, can I get an early warning? Yes, by past outage observability. Lastly, can I troubleshoot faster next time when this problem comes back? Yes, you can do that through triggered automation, where basically when a ticket comes in, it's going to do the troubleshooting by itself. Or you can do that through auto intent, which is the interactive automation, or you can do that through the self-service AI bot. So let me quickly turn this back here and let's use the AI bot to just see what that looks like. So if I go back to our original page, right? I go to the AI bot. I'm just gonna clear this quickly, clear all, and I'm just gonna extend a few of the neighbors, right? So here I can just go ahead and be like, hey, can you use actually can you please run, select the automation I want, observability for past outages, right? So you can basically feed it any automation, and I'm gonna run this on all the devices on the map and summarize them in a table. So by the way, if you're looking at this for the first time, this is our super important technology that introducing in the new R12. So we will have like other follow-up sessions where we'll get more in depth of how this AI bot runs and what are some of the things that it can do for you. But basically, it's a natural language bot that you can interact with. It is powered by OpenAI, so it's able to go understand what I'm looking for and then give me the output. So we will just wait a few seconds for it to give us the output. So as you can see, it has gone ahead, right, for the 4 devices. It has told us that you see an alert was found on 3 of the devices. On this device, it found, the interface error disabled, and also on these other devices, it found the same interface error disabled. So that's just how powerful it is, right? You can basically take a whole network right here and ask it to tell you everything that's wrong with the network, and it's just gonna go look up that past outage database and find every single problem and summarize that for you. So that's all for the webinar today. Any questions so far? Let me just pull up the question sheet. So I don't see any questions so far. So if there are no questions, right, we can conclude the webinar. Thanks for listening.